Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the first in our Writing Center workshop series. This is Online Research 101. I'm Heather McDonald. I'm your Writing Center coordinator. I'm very happy to see all of you here today. That makes me excited. It's very infrequent that we get to come together as a group, and I miss it. So thank you for joining me today. I hope that you get what you need out of this and that it gives you a little bit of hope and motivation to move forward with your writing projects. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about some of the things that are going to make you a more efficient researcher, some things that are going to maybe demystify what we mean when we ask you to do research. I know it's kind of a term that we throw around and a lot of your assignments are asking you to do research, but I also recognize that you probably don't have any clue what that is right now, and you shouldn't. This is the first semester of perhaps your first year, and this is one of the things that you get to learn about when you participate in a university academic learning community. And we're excited that you're here. So let me bring you into the world of academic research and hopefully show you some things that are going to make you quick and fast and find all the articles you want at your fingertips. And at the end of this, if you still have questions, I'll point you to lots of resources that can help you out when people aren't available. So let's get started. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen and get my presentation up and going here. There we go. So this is Online Research 101. Oops, oh, we're way back at the beginning. There we go, back at the beginning. Online Research 101, brought to you by the Writing Center. We're always here. We have evening appointments, we have weekend appointments. You can meet with a Writing Center tutor and actually get this information one-on-one. And anytime you have questions, reach out to us because we are happy to help you. We'll talk a little bit more about the Writing Center at the end, and hopefully you've all booked your first appointment already, and if not, we'll see you soon. Here's our agenda for today. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what it means to research at the university level. Then we're going to talk about how you actually get started. It's really easy, I find, when we do online learning to just maybe push some of our assignments off to the side and think, I'll let future Heather deal with those assignments, but the future is now. We are approaching Thanksgiving weekend, so we're coming up pretty quick to the halfway point in the semester. So if there's things that you haven't started, for whatever reason, this is a good time to find that inner strength and use this as motivation to start attacking those projects with gusto. We're also going to talk about how to use the Harriet Irving Library. Now, normally what I would do in your first semester is I would visit all of your classes and I would give a presentation about sort of general Writing Center things. And you would be sick of seeing my face, but we can't do that this semester. I would recommend in those classes that you walk down to the library and you ask the librarians for a tour. Now, the library is open and we'll talk about that. But in, I guess in the absence of being able to physically walk around the library, I'm going to take you on a virtual library tour. And hopefully you will, you'll learn a little bit about that. I'm also going to talk about how to keep track of your research, because the thing about research is that it's interesting. So we kind of go down the rabbit hole and we find lots of cool stuff because there's lots of cool stuff that's been written. And when you want to use lots of cool stuff and you don't keep track of it properly, it can be frustrating when you go to write your paper and you think, where did I find that source? I forget. So we'll talk about some tips and tricks to keep track of your research. Okay, here we go. Let's talk about why we research. So you have paid tuition to come here to St. Thomas and voluntarily participate in our world. And our world is this wonderful world where we like to learn interesting things and we like to hear about other people's interesting things that they have written about and that they've studied. And it's an important thing to understand because as a student, you're not an inactive participant in that. In fact, you play such an important role to the professor because that professor loves their subject. So let's say you have a professor in psychology. Your psychology professor has gone through several years of school and several different degrees so that they can get to the point where they're teaching you psychology. So it's their passion, and they probably have like one or two little like research subject niches that they love researching. And when they teach that class and when they're projecting that passion of their subject to you, and then they give you your first research project, that's like, let's say 30 to 50 students who are then going out and doing research on subjects and bringing that research back to the professor. The professor can read your papers and look at the research you've done, and maybe they're going to discover really cool stuff that you found that they didn't know existed, and they want to read it. So in a way, you contribute to the furthering of the knowledge in your field by being a student. So yes, you are learning how to be a student. You're learning about how to write a paper and how to write a research paper, but you're actually participating to the development of the field of psychology, which is a really cool thing. So your professors, who are experts in their field, they research because they want to keep their community, so let's say their psychology community, up to date by writing about studies they do or research they do. They write about other people's recent findings. They write about other people's writings within the discipline. And they really just have this conversation with all of the people who are writing about all of the cool things in psychology. It's like participating in the world's biggest conversation. And it's done in a really methodical and thoughtful way, so that we're always taking other people's views into account. But those views are based on scholarship, and in this way we make sure that the information we have is always like correct, it's always right. We're not doing a lot of opinion-based research or finding bizarre web sources. And when they write about stuff, they create more resources for the subject area. So professors here at St. Thomas have written textbooks that we use. They've written like books or monographs. They've written tons of journal articles. Being a professor means not only do you teach, but you have to write and research as well. So it's part of their job, and it's part of your job to participate in that activity as well. That's why we always generally ask you to do at least one research paper in your first semester. We want to get your feet wet when it comes to this. So as an undergraduate student, your job, as I said, is to participate in this community, but you're also getting the sense of what it means to think in your field. So for instance, if we asked you to research, you know what, I'm going to stop sharing for just 1 second. I want to hear from you in the comments. Oh yes, we're definitely going to get to peer-reviewed references. Don't worry about that. Throw me in the comments what class you're in that's asking you to do a research paper. Like, what subjects are we looking at? I want to be able to use some examples that are going to make sense to you. Biology, okay. Religion, health psychology, good, good, good. Keep them coming. Excellent. Perfect. Okay, let's use, oh yeah, the robot and animal ethics course. That's a new one. Sociology, excellent. I'm actually going to use sociology as an example coming up, so that's really good. I usually pick sociology because I find most people take a social sciences class. And social sciences, there's two kinds of classes at St. Thomas. There's social sciences and humanities. So the social sciences tend to be like the ologies and isms, and the humanities tend to be things like philosophy and English and those ones where we study like more literature-based texts. So let's use religion as an example. So I'm going to go back to my presentation now, and let's say that you are being asked to write about like, oh my gosh, it's really hard to come up with something off the top of my head. Well, it doesn't matter, any subject, whatever your essay is about. You're being asked to look at that subject as a religious studies expert. You're asked to filter that information through the lens of a religious studies scholar. So you could look at the same topic, like let's say you're looking at racism, and you can approach racism from a bunch of different fields. You can approach it as a psychologist, so why do people think the way that they do? You could approach it as a sociologist and think, what factors in society contribute to this topic? You could approach it as a criminologist and talk about like what criminal behaviors are in the sort of semantic field of racism. And in that way, you kind of understand that there's this topic in the middle, and depending on what class you're in, depends on how you look at it. And that also makes a difference as to how you research. So when we, oh, come on now. Oh, I want my, there we go. When we think about research, this is, if someone would have told me this in my undergraduate degree, I think I would have done things totally differently from day one. So when I think about researching something, of course, the first thing that I would think about is going to Google and just like typing something into Google, like I want to write about Marxism. So I'm going to Google like, what is Marxism? And it's probably going to take me to Wikipedia, and that's probably going to be the first thing I look at, because that's generally where we tend to go as inexperienced non-university community researchers. So my job today is to show you how to approach research differently. And if you can start out like this from the beginning, every time you start a project, you're going to save yourself a ton of time. So an encyclopedia, Wikipedia, encyclopedia have the same last part of the word, pedia, and the encyclopedia is different from Wikipedia because Wikipedia is crowdsourced. So that means that any single person can edit any single Wikipedia entry. And that means that there's a ton of incorrect information out there. Also, there's a lot of opinion-based information. Also, there's a lot of information that does not come from scholarly sources. When you research, we want you to find things like at the university library that are written by scholars for the academic community. An encyclopedia is the very first place you should start. An encyclopedia or a dictionary or another work that we would call a reference work. And those things define the terms for us. So when you start writing, the first thing you should do is to find one of these encyclopedias or dictionaries, and they are written about every discipline you can imagine. There's an encyclopedia of sociology. There's an encyclopedia of religious studies. There's an encyclopedia of biology. There's dictionaries of all those things. And what they do is they say, here's the term you're looking at. Here's like the textbook description of what that means. And often they will link you to the people who wrote the foundational works about those subjects. Or they will say, here's a couple other works where it talks about the subject a lot. And the great thing about doing everything online now is that they're all hyperlinked. And as long as there's open access to them, you can generally find them. So if you were starting out, for instance, researching in gerontology and you were talking about aging, you could go find the Encyclopedia of Gerontology, look up aging, and it would define aging for you, and probably related terms like aging and, think of a related term like aging and death, aging and retirement, aging and whatever. So in that way, by starting at the top, the biggest category, defining your terms, you're following the formula we want you to follow. So when you start to research your project, and I'll show you how to find these online in a bit, think big first. Then we narrow down a little bit to the subject of books. And books, of course, as you know, well, it's a book, it's a physical book, you can pick it up. Sometimes you'll have different sorts of books. I'm referring here to what we call a monograph. So a monograph is a book written about a single subject. Sometimes you'll have things like textbooks. I would probably classify those more as reference sources because they have a lot of definitions in them. They're kind of the main text for that subject. And then journal articles, which narrow the research down even a little bit more, and then all the way down to online sources. So let me just break these down for you. So again, your encyclopedias and dictionaries we would call reference sources. They're specific to the subject. They give you these definitions, and they usually give you amazing links to other works that you could look at next. So if you think about it, if your assignment is asking you to find like 5 scholarly sources, and again, by scholarly, we mean written by academics for academics. If it's asking you to find 5 sources, and the first source that you start with is the encyclopedia or dictionary of your discipline, and then at the bottom, it gives you like 3 more sources, you just kind of follow the map that these give you. And that's another really big tip. whatever you're looking at, consult its bibliography, because those people that wrote those things have consulted a whole bunch of other stuff to write it. So if you find one great source, one great book, one great article, look at the bibliography and just pick, like hand pick what other sources you're going to find next. So books, monographs, single subject, they can have one or multiple authors. People can co-author books. The great thing about books is that they usually provide you good context. So if you were writing, let's say in psychology, and somebody wrote a book about PTSD in war veterans, I bet that the beginning chapter would be this kind of broad introduction, like what is PTSD? When did we start to study it? Why do we start to study it in veterans more than other people? And you can take that big sweeping contextual information and use that in your paper to help you write and narrow down. So you don't have to come up with these thoughts on your own, but if you know where to find the good information, then it's easier to filter in. I'm just going to stop sharing for a second, check to see if we have any comments. Nope, we're doing good. Let's keep going. So journal articles. Sometimes journal articles are called periodicals. And I think students, when students hear research, they immediately think, I must find journal articles. And I don't know why that is. I think it's language that we hear a lot, but you have to think about a journal like a fancy academic magazine. So think about like People magazine, or think about like Time magazine, or any other magazine. They have issues that sometimes have like themes, and people will write articles and submit them to the magazine, and the magazine might publish them in that month's or the next month's, depending on if it fits the theme. This is what journal articles are all about. It's professors or other academics writing these like kind of tinier niche pieces, submitting them to journals. And there's like a journal of medicine, a journal of religious studies, a journal of biology, journal of like, there's a million, just like there's a million magazines. And they look like magazines. Like if you go down to the library, you can physically pick them up. They're like shiny, they've got like advertisements in them, they've got cool graphics, they've got charts, they've got, you know, bios and book reviews, and it's really cool. You'll find stuff that you're interested in. But these are like small topics. So if you're asked just randomly in your assignment to find 5 sources, not all of those should be journal articles, because you're going to get like these tiny focused topics that might be a bit too narrow for your scope in a first semester essay. So this is where we get to talk about peer reviewed. Actually, we'll talk about that in the next slide, but journal articles are usually peer reviewed, and journal articles have super useful bibliographies. Online sources, I just want to caution you, it can be very difficult to determine if your online source is reputable or scholarly. It can give you some really great niche information or specific information, but it also can sometimes take you on a tangent. So unless you're asked specifically to consult online sources, see if you can find that exact same information in a scholarly source from the library. So peer reviewed, let's talk about that. Let's check the chat. Can I check the chat from here? I gotta get to know more about Zoom. What if we write about a topic and there isn't much information on it, like COVID-19? It's pretty new. It takes a while to get books written on it, and there's lots we still don't know. That's a great, great question. How do I go about finding info on that? Will I be able to write with little information? That is an excellent question. Let's address that right now. Some of you might be at the stage where you're picking a topic, and that's generally the hardest thing to do because you kind of are shooting in the dark. So my question to you, Aaliyah, would be, are you being asked specifically to write about COVID-19, or is this something that you're choosing? Because sometimes the topics we really want to write about, there just isn't enough information to write about it. And at this stage, I would really, really encourage you to pick a topic that's easy to write about. So it should still really be something you're interested in, because we all know how awful it is to write about stuff that we're not interested in. It should be something you're interested in and something that you can find scholarly information on. It was the most interesting. There were 2 others. Okay. So if you're being asked to write about it, if it's one of the options, then there's probably some great ways around that. So you can think about, you could think about like, is there literature written about like other pandemics? Is there literature that's written about like other kind of medical situations that are similar? I bet there are a lot of people writing about COVID-19. And if you are looking at online sources, you just want to make sure those sources are reputable. So like lean towards more like journalism articles or articles that come from recognized sources. Anything that ends in .org or .edu, those are scholarly, well, not scholarly, but those are more reputable educational type sources. If you're getting other like articles, think like New York Times, think like CBC, think recognized journalistic contributions rather than like tweets or like opinion editorials. So, oh, great, excellent. So there are some journal articles being written already. And that's very possible. When these new big things come out, lots of times researchers are just like ready to go and they will publish articles. So maybe like Emma and Aaliyah, you could connect and you could share research with each other. And maybe actually we'll use COVID-19 as a search option in just a sec when we hop onto the library site. Good question. Okay, let's go back here to peer-reviewed. This is really important because professors often ask you to find peer-reviewed articles. So, you know, when you're shopping on Amazon and let's say you're shopping for a tablet and you type tablet into the search bar and it gives you 80 gazillion results that you don't want. And then you use your filters to filter in that information. So you could filter like you wanted Prime delivery only, you want 5-star or 4 stars or more, you want, you know, whatever, price under $500. And in doing that, filtering those results, you get results that are more tailored for what you're looking for. On the library site, you can do that too. And one of the filters you can click is peer reviewed so that it will only give you peer reviewed literature. So let's say, in the chat, who is like one of your professors that is asking you to do a research project? Shoot me out a name. Oh, Wilfred Langman, Krakow, perfect. So let's use Dr. Krakow as an example. Dr. Krakow has published journal articles before. So when he publishes journal articles, so he writes a journal article on something he's interested in, writes the whole article, and then he thinks this would be perfect to submit to, you know, X journal of whatever, Journal of Psychology. And before he can submit it, it has to be reviewed by his peers. So that means other people at other universities who are in the discipline of psychology, who are like faculty members who are writing about this. So people will like volunteer to do this and they will like contact journals and volunteer to be peer editors. And so they'll submit the journal article, it will be reviewed by all of their peers and they might make suggestions to him like, hey, actually, did you know there's this new study that you might want to reference? And here's the link to it. Or this thing that you've said here, did you know that there's this other source you might want to consult to add information to what you're saying? So these articles are actually kind of group edited by the peers of the people writing them. And that makes them better and stronger because we're better researchers together, as you have demonstrated today in your chat by sharing resources. So the bigger academic community, the people who write these journal articles, share information with each other, edit each other's work, and make it better. And they have to go through that peer editing process before they're published in the journals. And that's how we know that that information is accurate and correct. So when we ask you for peer-reviewed stuff, we mean find stuff that has already gone through the peer review process before it's been published, and you can just filter when you do your search. A note about Google Scholar. So Google Scholar, if you've never seen it, actually let's go to it right now. I love showing people this if they've never seen it because sometimes it blows people's mind. But I also do want to caution you that Google Scholar is not a great place to start. It searches for things in a way, oh my gosh, it's really hard to talk and like do stuff at the same time. There we go. This is Google Scholar, and Google Scholar uses the Google kind of search algorithms. So let's say you were searching for COVID-19 on Google Scholar. Let's just try it out actually. Google Scholar is like a section of Google that supposedly filters, oh my gosh, why can't I spell? That supposedly filters out kind of academic type resources, but it's a slippery slope. So you do here see that there are lots of options, but Google casts its net really widely and not accurately. So you'll notice in the filters on the left that you can't actually filter just to peer-reviewed articles, so you don't know where these things are coming from. Also, the university libraries pay to search, to have like the access to databases where they keep scholarly works. So like they pay EBSCO to be able to search their findings or their holdings, and they pay like JSTOR to be able to search their holdings. Google doesn't cast its net as wide in that way. So Google Scholar, maybe you get 1/500th of the information you can get on the university library, and you get weird stuff because it uses bizarre search terms. Let's check the chat. Oh, chat, where are you? Oh, there's a website. EasyBib. Oh, yeah, we'll get to that. That's a great question. The short answer is no, and I'll tell you why in a sec. So back to Google Scholar. If you're searching for COVID-19, this might be a good place to start, maybe, but I would actually encourage you just to go straight to the university library instead. Don't get swayed by the fact that it's Google and you're familiar with it. Go to the library and it will save you lots of time. Now, back to the PowerPoint. I want to just take a quick second and talk about citing, because we say the word citing a lot. So just to make sure everyone knows what we're talking about, when we say cite, what we mean is refer to the source. So let's say you find a source on COVID-19 and it's written by, you know, McDonald. When you write your paper and you say, in her article on COVID-19, Heather McDonald said, this pandemic is blah, blah, blah. There's two parts to citing. Citing means that you have just told the reader that the information that you got from me is this sentence that you're about to say. So you're saying that this isn't my thought. Heather McDonald said this in her article. But the second part of citing is that you have to list that information in your bibliography. Your professor will check for this. They want to make sure that when you mention something in your paper that you got from somebody else, that you have then listed the full publication information in your bibliography. So you can't list stuff in your bibliography that you haven't used in your paper, and you can't use stuff in your paper that you haven't listed in your bibliography. So when we say cite, we just mean we're giving props to the source that this information came from. So just keep that in mind as we go. What I just said, use what you cite what you use. Before we do keeping track of research, I want to go to the actual library website. Let's take you there. Dear Zoom, please make it easier to share screens. Yours truly, Heather McDonald. Okay, here we go. Here we are at the UNB Library's website, and I want to take you on a bit of a quick tour of this so you know all of the cool stuff. The first thing that you're going to notice is that there are several libraries at UNB. You are going to be searching predominantly the Harriet Irving Library. These other libraries, science and forestry, engineering, even though they're closed, they'll be open someday, and those would be libraries specifically used for people in those departments. So the Harriet Irving Library is the one that's just in the middle of campus. And you actually can go in there. This is brand new, this book a seat situation here. And I want to show you, because if you are stuck at home and you're looking for a place to go, please go to the library. You can choose to book your seat in any of these zones. Now, pro tip, my favorite zone, well, it kind of depends on what you want. If you're someone who needs to be a bit more social and you want to see out the window, the cafe tables are right on the first floor. and you can kind of see down campus, which is cool. If you need to be like isolated, definitely consider doing like the first floor carrels are in the stacks of books. It's like a long line of stacks of books and you're like right at the end. No one is distracting you there except yourself. So if you're looking for zero distraction, find a carrel. My favorite place to go was always the Beaverbrook room, which is on the 4th floor. It has currently very little capacity, so you can see it does book up quickly, but it is this beautiful room with these red carpets and red leather chairs, and it's surrounded by these built-in bookshelves with old books, and it is the book collection of Lord Beaverbrook, who was in Winston Churchill's cabinet, but donated all of his books to the library. So it's a cool place to go, FYI. And as a student, you can book your rooms there. So that's an interesting thing. When you are at the library and you find a book, you can use this Ask Us service right here, which is a live chat. So you could say, hey, I'm trying to find this book. And I think they have, I think they will find it for you. And like, you'll go pick it up at the front desk. So you can still go get books, which is great. At the top here, most people never go beyond this screen. They just start to enter their search terms here, and that's as far as they go. But if you just scroll down, you will see these research by subject categories. So what the library's done is they've gathered all of the possible resources you could need to study within these subjects. They've put them in one place. Let's look at, we haven't done biology yet. Let's look at biology. So if you were researching in biology, they have gathered here the top article and research databases. So think of these like, they're like groupings of journals, and you can search within this big grouping. And if you wanted to know more about what each of these databases does, you press the little question mark and it tells you kind of what you're looking at. So remember the encyclopedias and dictionaries, the reference sections. Below that, they've gathered all of your top reference materials. So here is, now of course, biology means a lot of different things. Fun fact, my mom was a biologist during her career. So let's say you wanted to do the Encyclopedia of Human Biology. Bad news here, because that isn't hyperlinked, that means it's probably only available at the university. When it has a call number after here that is hyperlinked, that means it's only available in the reference section, because generally we can't take these big reference works out of the library, but you can access them at the library. So if you were desperate to read the Encyclopedia of Human Biology, you can go to the library and check it out. But any of these other ones are hyperlinked. So what's Science Direct? Yeah, like let's try that. Who's in biology? Give me like a search term that we're actually, let's use COVID-19. Let's just see what comes up if we search COVID-19. Cool. So this is in Science Direct. It's like another kind of database that we can look at. And here are your filters. So right now we have 24,119 results by just searching COVID-19. So yes, Aaliyah, there is stuff out there, it looks like. We can refine. We can refine to, I want really up-to-date stuff, which of course it would be anyway. We can refine to, should let you refine to peer review somewhere here. Maybe not in this database, but generally you can go for peer review. But let's say we only want stuff published in like 2020, and we only want, ooh, let's do an encyclopedia entry. So here's a brief history of virology. So if you wanted to talk generally about viruses as like an introduction to your COVID-19 paper, like here's how viruses have affected us globally, or here's some other examples of pandemics, you might find it in this encyclopedia entry. Let's go back to the main page. Okay. I'm just going to come back to the reference materials page. So back at the guide section here, I encourage you to find your subject guide and to use that. I also would like to show you here that when you use this search bar, You can choose to search just what we have at the UMB library or what we have kind of in its holdings, or libraries worldwide. I would definitely click libraries worldwide. It will widen your search. I would also encourage you to click on advanced search every time. Here's what's cool about this. Instead of keyword, I also would encourage you to use subject phrase. Because let's say you put in COVID-19, it will search anything that's got 19 in it instead of like the phrase COVID-19. You can also use your Boolean operators. And if you have never used a Boolean operator, let me tell you, they make your life a lot easier. For instance, and you could search COVID-19 as a subject phrase, and how about, like maybe you were looking at, I don't know, what are you looking at for COVID-19? Breathing, good. Okay, let's go back to sharing screen. So COVID-19 and breathing. So now what I've done by using the Boolean operator and is I'm searching for articles that have both COVID-19 and breathing. Now breathing might not get us a lot of results, so we want to think of other words that are in the same semantic field as breathing. So you might want to think of like respiratory, respiration. You could think of like lungs or ventilators, like any words that are kind of around that. You can also use what's called a wildcard. So instead of going breathing, ing is your suffix to breathing. If you just do the root part of the word, breath, and then put in a star, now what it will do is it will tell the search to search for any ending on that root word. Breathe, breaths, breathing, I don't know, whatever, any other ending that they can find. So let's just search and see what we find. Look at that. One perfect article, Catching Our Breath, Reshaping Rehabilitation Services for COVID-19. Now with catching our breath, a phrase that they're using, or is it talking specifically about breathing? You might have to read that abstract. Here's one about detection in exhaled breath. So like non-invasive approaches to maybe diagnosing whether or not you have COVID-19. You would have to kind of go through and read these, but you can also use the refine this search section on the side. And here you'll see that peer reviewed right here is an option. So if you click peer reviewed, now it's going to take me down to 20 articles, and I know that they're all peer reviewed. You'll also notice that they do say peer reviewed right in the title of the article. So then if you did find a great article and you clicked on it, just go to its bibliography. So let's view the full text here. Let's pretend that this article is going to be the best one. And here we are. So you could download it as a PDF. Pro tip, sometimes the library has to get electronic permission to get these, or has to reach out to another institution, and it will just kind of like click you to, it's something that says, I think it's something like, get this article. And that can take up to 2 to 3 days for the library to process your request and send you that article. So make sure you're starting your research at least a couple days in advance in case you do need to get something sent to you. So if you were to download that PDF, sometimes depending on the database, you might have to create an account, but then you would download that PDF and you would look at that bibliography to get the best information. Let's take a quick website break, and I want to address this question about EasyBib. So when you do your citations, I know it's complicated because you could be asked to do something in like APA or MLA or Chicago, and you're not going to know, like, am I getting all the right parts? It could be very easy to go to one of those citation generators, but I would really encourage you to stay away from them, because let's use APA as an example. We just came out with a 7th edition in October, and a lot of the rules changed. All the citations look different now, but a lot of those citation machines did not update to the recent edition. So if you put your book into that citation machine like EasyBib, then you put it on your paper, it's going to be marked wrong, and you're going to lose marks. And that is an awful thing to lose marks on because it's simple. You can come to the Writing Center, we can help you out, we can show you where to get those resources. Those are easy marks you can get. I want to go back to the UMB library and show you a couple more things. I just lost my page. Okay, let's go back here. So yeah, when you go to search, make sure you press advanced search. And when I talked about Boolean operators, I want to show you where I find the information about that. If you click on the help tab and you go to library help videos, they have this amazing video library. These are videos the library has made themselves to help you specifically with this website. Please, please take the best 9 minutes you have ever spent and watch 10 research tips and tricks. I mean, it's amazing. I learned so much stuff that I did not know, and I've been doing this for a few years. The Boolean operators video will tell you how to use those words like and, or, to use quotation marks, to use those wildcards, to use truncators, and make your first search the only search you have to do instead of like constantly plugging different stuff into that search bar. There's lots of really great ones on here, like how to find reference materials. Let's say you want that dictionary of biology, or you want a different dictionary, but you're just maybe not remembering where to go or how to find it. Watch that 2-minute video or read the transcript. This Ask Us instant message thing on the right, actually, let's try this. This links directly to a reference librarian. So this usually goes to like Aggie. Oh, amazing. Look, they're right there. I'm doing a presentation on the library and showing how amazing you are. Thanks for responding so quickly, and have a great day. So anytime you need help, now because they are people, they do have hours. It's usually the hours that the reference desk is open. They can help you out with any question, like, hey, can I come down and see you? How do I find this book? I'm trying to research something for COVID-19 and having a hard time. Shout out to them and they will, they'll help you out. Please reach out anytime. Aren't they delightful? Please use Ask Us. Please use this help video library. Under the help bar, you can also go to research help, and this will give you some specific tips on things like how to use databases, what a database is, how to find the right database for you. And, ooh, this is a new one too, the fake news guide. So if you are using online sources, some ways to make sure that your sources are going to be like usable in class. So let's go back to talking about how to keep track of this research that you're doing. Oh, well, that was a very useless slide. Right. I'll just show you a template. When you're keeping track of your research, a really important thing to do is to make sure that you have some sort of system. It doesn't really matter what the system is, but your system has to be the same system that you're going to use for the duration of your assignment. And I'm going to show you a template that I've come up with that's going to help you with that. I used to find that when I did research projects, I would have like a notebook here and I would have paper there and I'd have like a file on my computer and I would kind of keep everything everywhere and I wouldn't know where stuff was when I went to write. This is a fillable PDF. You can also print this off. You can find these at stu.ca/writing center. We have a whole page of writing resources. And this is something that you can use not only to record the publication information, but it also can show you what you got out of that source that you're going to use in your paper. So when you're writing a bigger research project and you want to show that somebody's evidence or somebody's thought supports or contradicts you or lends like a keyword or a vocabulary source, you can use this PDF for every source. It's very useful. Another one that you can use is actually combined with an essay outline. And it looks like this. This is another resource that's available on our webpage. It's a simple essay outline. This does a couple things. It makes sure that you have a topic sentence for each paragraph, which is so important. It's another one of the things we look for in academic writing. It lets you put your points, your subtopics, your points and examples, and then at the end of every paragraph, it lets you keep track of the sources that you've used in that paragraph. So let's say you've got like your camera on your phone and you've taken pictures of like the front of the book and the publication page on the book. That still can get confused from which book did I get this quote from when I write. So by using an outline like this, you can always keep track of the sources that you've used and then go in and do your citations later, or bring it into the Writing Center and we can help you incorporate that. I wanted to show you one more thing about reference works. I found a really good example of a couple of different kinds of reference entries. So I tried to think of a term that I needed to kind of clarify for myself, and I landed on sociology. And I remember getting a lot of papers last year about intersectionality, and I thought I need to learn more about that. So I'm going to use it as an example. So on the library website, I went to the research guide for sociology. This was one of the first references that came up, the dictionary for sociology. I just typed in up in the top bar up here, intersectionality, and it gave me this beautiful dictionary definition. It's a little long because intersectionality, which just basically means like when identities or categories are overlapping. So like, for instance, you can be Black and you can be a woman, and you can be like, you can kind of have these cross sections where your experiences overlap, and that can affect all sorts of things like socially and economically and politically for you. So this term intersectionality you often hear when we talk about the social sciences, because everything is kind of a little bit cross-curricular right now, and that's kind of where we tend to focus our research more. Anyway, this is a great dictionary definition of intersectionality. So I read it and I was like a little bit more informed, although I definitely can see how I would need to read more about this. And if I scroll all the way down to the bottom, it says in the last paragraph, important recent discussions include, and then it gives me 2 different works that I could find. I could just plug those into the library website and find, and they could be my next sources. Now I did consult another source, another reference source, just to see if it gave me any different information. And I'll show you that source right now. So I went to the Oxford reference. This is from the Science Direct database, and this is intersectionality from oh, sorry, just a sec. Oh dear, I lost my page. The bar for this goes right across my URL, which is very annoying sometimes. Let's go back to this intersectionality definition. Okay, so this is from the International Encyclopedia of the Social and Behavioral Sciences, 2nd edition. So this gives me another definition of intersectionality. Then it gives me this great paragraph of keywords. So if I was using these keywords to search on the library, I could get a lot different results depending on what keywords I used with intersectionality. I might say intersectionality and sexuality, intersectionality and privilege, and it would like narrow my search. And all of these words are hyperlinked, so they're going to take me to other articles. And then if I scroll down to the bottom, this actually gives me, this is a very long entry, so there's a lot of parts to it, which is perfect. If I scroll all the way down to the bottom, it gives me an actual bibliography. So I could just use these as my next sources, which I'm pretty excited about. Anthology, actually that's another good point. An anthology is another example of a reference source. An anthology you could think of like a textbook where a couple people, like these editors, Thomson Wadsworth Belmont and Thomson Wadworth, I guess he's the only editor. He has asked a bunch of scholars in the field to submit to his collected works, to this anthology about this one subject of race, class, and gender. So that's a good source too. I think, are most of the citations correct for the journals that we would find in the library? Yes, but they will only give you the parts. It's your job to plug them into the different citation style that you're using. So it might just give you like title, publication date, edition, editors, like date, place, but each citation style asks you to put those in a different order. So you might have to reach out to us for help for that, or you might need to like visit some of the websites. Speaking of which, I want to show you one last thing. Stu.ca. Let's go to stu.ca, your favorite and mine. And here we are, stu.ca. If you go to current students, which is where all the cool stuff lives for you, and you scroll down on the right to Writing Center, this is our web page, and these 4 badges down here give you lots of great information. You can click on this to book an appointment with us. It's super easy. You book and manage your own appointments online. We have tutors who work evenings and weekends. We also have this great page of writing resources. So these are all like freebies or printables or worksheets that I've done, or PDFs or fillable PDFs. There's lots of different ones. I would point your gaze down here to the citation styles. Now the APA section is brand new because it's just been updated, but you can also find information here in citation styles for MLA and Chicago, or like Anthropological Association if you use it. Sometimes if you're in a journalism class, they might use a different style, or CJPS is Canadian Journal Political Science Style Guide, depending on your discipline. Also under current students, we have the peer tutoring program. So if you're looking for help with the content that's in your class, or you need like a study buddy, or you need some just motivation to kind of student a little bit better, find your groove, you can reach out to a peer tutor. We have them for all the subjects. You click on book a peer tutoring appointment. You click here to see a list of peer tutors. And once you have found your peer tutors, oops, that was a bad example. Once you've found the peer tutor that you want for the class that you're taking, and if there is no class listed for the peer tutor, but you're in it and you want help with it, there's a form that you can fill out just back one screen. So you think to yourself, okay, I need to see an English tutor. I'm going to book with Kate McEwen. And you can go back to the screen and click on stu.mywc online, access her schedule, and book an appointment with her. And this is the link. If there's no tutor listed for your course, you can fill out that form as well. So those are some resources that you can use when people aren't available for you. But I want to put it back out to you for the next couple minutes to see if you have any other questions about how to do online research. You've had some really great questions so far. I very much appreciate it. I think the number one thing to remember about doing research is that your professor at the end of the day is the best resource that you have, because your professor creates your assignment and they mark your assignment and they teach you the content that they want to see reflected in that assignment. I know it can be a little intimidating because it's not as easy as just walking into their office for their office hours, but all professors do have office hours. You just have to figure out how to find them, and they'll have that information right in their Moodle pages or whatever, whatever program that they're using. And if you reach out to them, they will help you. They're happy to help. This is the benefit of coming to a smaller institution like St. Thomas. I found a couple of articles that don't have an issue number. Is that okay? Absolutely, that's okay. You can do a couple of things. I'm going to show you one. Where does that article go? About intersectionality. Okay. Sometimes when we find articles, it might not have an issue number because it might be published in an online kind of forum. So normally what we would say is only put the information that you have, but make sure that you're searching to find that other information. You'll notice that lots of articles have this number, which is DOI, and DOI stands for Digital Object Identifier. So when this article is published online, it's given this identifier number. It's like the place that it lives on the internet, and APA especially will ask you for the DOI if it's an online based source. So kind of dig around, see if there's any hyperlinks that could take you to the actual journal's webpage, and then you might find a volume. But if you've searched and there is no volume number, then you just fill in the information that you have. Problem with references. Can't put them into APA format where it indents the second line. Oh, this is probably my least favorite part of writing ever, is like using my word processor to format stuff. So a writing tutor, if you're having a problem with the hanging indentation, a writing tutor can certainly talk you through like what the steps would be. Sometimes there's like a problem with the word processing program. It will come down to that. You might need to reach out to IT so they can kind of fiddle around with the settings of your word processor. But yes, if you need a little tutorial as to how to put the hanging indent in, definitely book an appointment with us and we can talk you through that. So that is what I have for Online Research 101. It's hard to cover everything, but I hope I've given you some tips. My final takeaways, if you can remember anything from this presentation, it would be to, oh, I know how it just doesn't work. Yes, contact IT, absolutely. They can do like software things that we just don't have the knowledge for. So my final takeaways for this presentation are this. If you have any questions about your assignment or understanding your assignment, reach out to your professor, reach out to the Writing Center, reach out to your classmates, but don't struggle alone. We have so many resources here and we're just desperate to help you. So please use us. Also, if you have any questions about finding research, use that library website, use those help videos, use the Ask Us chat to reach out to the reference librarian, or even book that study space and go to the library and talk to a person. There's still people out there to talk to and they can help you out so much more efficiently and quickly than you trying to kind of Google things on your own and getting frustrated. That's the last thing we want. Use the stu.ca/writing center website to find those resources on citation styles and book with a writing tutor because we're just here all the time waiting for you to come. Now, any other questions you have specifically about citations, I'm going to say goodbye in this presentation and hang out for you. But I want to thank you so much for coming today, and I hope that this has helped. And this is all I have for this morning. So happy writing, happy researching, and thanks for watching.